Warner Brothers is for sale. We talked a little bit about that earlier in the show and on previous episodes where I've been asked about, James Gunn and the DCU and if it's safe for them, if WB sells, blah 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 blah. I've been clear from the jump that I personally am not crazy about the idea of WB selling. It feels like the company, that company is always for fucking sale. I think it's been sold like 3 times in the past 6 years or something like that. But they are for sale. It's happening. I certainly do not want Disney buying them. Disney just bought 20th Century Fox. That's enough. They've got enough. Monopolies are a real thing, and they're a threat, a big threat, not only to the film industry, but to our entire way of life. With all this corporate consolidation we're seeing happen, it's not good. And for the same reason, I don't want to see Skydance by Warner Brothers either, because they just bought Paramount. I don't want the same company owning two major movie studios. That's just a no for me. And going back to Disney for a second, because I can already hear some people commenting, "Oh, but what about if Disney buys them? We get Marvel and DC crossover." I could give a fuck about Marvel and DC being owned by the same studio, and by that I mean I could give a fuck. I don't want it. That is the fuck I give. Is that I don't want it to happen. That's a disaster waiting to happen, and it would not be the great news that a lot of you think it would be. It would be convoluted. It'd be too much under one roof, and we'd end up getting a lot less comic book movies and TV because they'd probably cram them all into one studio. And God, no, just no. Now, uh, there's also the point that you need to keep in mind that when a film studio buys a film studio, you see a lot of people get fired because of redundancies. And that can be avoided if, say, a tech company were to buy Warner Brothers instead of another media company. So, who do I want to buy it? Well, my simplest answer is no one, but that's not an option. They're very much for sale, and the bidding war is underway. Now, a dream purchaser would be perhaps some filmmakers got together and maybe some theater owners got together and bought Warner Brothers, but that's also not going to happen. But unfortunately, the buyer is most certainly going to be a major corporation. They're the only ones who can afford to buy it. So we've got three options that are coming to mind for me, at least. Those are Amazon, Netflix, and Apple. So, Amazon and Apple, they're both tech companies, different branches of tech, but still tech companies. And Netflix is a streamer, the world's biggest streamer. But Amazon and Apple, they are both getting into streaming as well. And I'll start with Netflix. I'm not crazy about the idea of Netflix getting Warner Brothers because Netflix seems to have a disdain for the theatrical experience. And I mean, I get why they're a streamer. That's what their company is, and I will give them credit to the fact that they are putting some of their films in movie theaters. And I think I read a report today that they're actually even working with AMC theaters to put the Stranger Things season. God, what season are they on? 5. Put that finale in theaters um, on the same day it drops on Netflix. But I think it's clear that Netflix hopes to one day dethrone the theater industry entirely, and I don't want to see Warner Brothers, one of the classic film studios, fall under Netflix. And I'm really not crazy about Amazon getting them either. Amazon, I guess, would maybe be better than Netflix simply because I think they'd be more open to having their projects go to theaters first and then later putting them on Amazon Prime. There's also the fact that Netflix, they put out some good stuff, but they put out a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's just not good. And I don't want that touching Warner Brothers. I'd say Amazon probably has a better consistency in terms of quality over quantity, but there's also the fact that I cannot stand Jeff Bezos. I can't fucking stand the guy, and I don't trust Amazon really to handle the prestige of Warner Brothers Pictures and the legacy that that company has as arguably probably the greatest film studio of all time. And that brings me to my answer. I think Apple, as flawed as Apple is, and as corrupt as I'm sure the bigwigs that run it are, Steve Jobs founded that company on an attention to detail and a compassion for doing things right and beautifully. And I don't mean right morally. Uh, I mean right as I mean, sure, do things right morally. I'm not saying Steve Jobs is immoral. He was kind of a dick to his daughter. Anyway, doing things right in terms of not taking shortcuts. And I think that is still in Apple's DNA. The care they have for attention to detail and making things right and caring about their user experience. I think it's less so there than it was when Jobs was there because he was a total control freak, which I get. Because I can kind of be that way a little bit too, with things I own. So while I don't think that that is still 100% how Apple behaves, I think that they have more of an attention to quality and detail than other companies. And I think that is evident with how they've handled their original programming for Apple TV Plus, which is now just Apple TV, which smart move, by the way. That's a better name. And we've seen Apple, of course, put out really good stuff. Not a lot of stuff. Not a lot of stuff. They are really doing the quality over quantity uh, with their TV shows and movies. And we've even seen them partner with Warner Brothers on films like F1 to give them full theatrical releases before putting them on their streaming service. And Apple is just a very quality over quantity brand when it comes to what they produce. And I think uh, they're still a relatively small operation when it comes to their film and television division. So I think it would honestly be the perfect fit for them to buy WB and HBO Max, and instead of rolling WB and HBO Max into Apple TV, I think that you keep WB structured, that company and that studio structured the way it is, and you roll the Apple TV and film department into WB. Do away with Apple's TV streaming service, which, let's face it, it's not a super popular service. Um, and then you could just have HBO Max become like a default app on the iPhone and maybe be accessible through the Apple TV app. And that Apple TV can be like your digital hub for like stuff that you buy, which is really getting rarer and rarer in terms of buying movies or really even renting. Well, people still rent movies digitally if they don't want to wait for it to hit streaming. But anyway, they could pivot to have ownership of HBO Max and push that as their streaming service and maybe include it at a reduced rate if you have an iPhone or an Apple device. And there they can deliver the top tier quality that we've come to expect from Apple, that we've come to expect from HBO, and that we've come to expect from WB, and just meld it all together. And Warner Brothers at that point, I think the studio can just keep chugging along as they are and keep doing HBO Max or Apple HBO, whatever they want to call it. They've changed the name a million times, HBO Max. So whatever they want to call it, I think Max is the dumbest part of that. Didn't they name it Max? Yeah, they named it Max for a while, took out HBO. Really, they should have taken out the Max and just call it HBO. Anyway, I would push for Apple HBO. Anyway, whatever they want to call it, that can be the digital home now for WB's movies after they've had their run in theaters. And I think that Apple, to conclude my rambling, I think that they would be the best choice. And I'm hopeful that if a major corporation is going to buy WB, that if I had to pick one, I hope it's Apple. Hey everybody, Colton here, and this is the mailbag style show where I take your questions about Marvel, Star Wars, DC, movies and streaming in general, whatever you want to ask, send it in to the email address AskColtonNow@gmail.com, link in the description below. And hey, maybe you'll see your question featured right here on the show.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.